Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Today, we are looking at the endorsement of state police by northern leaders. The 19 northern governors and all the traditional rulers in the region have called for the amendment of the 1999 Constitution to give legal backing to state police. They said this is the only way to tackle the myriad security challenges affecting the region and the country at large. Among them, banditry, insurgency, kidnapping, and other forms of criminalities. This recommendation was contained in the communique issued at the end of the meeting of the Northern Governors Forum, NGF, and the Northern Traditional Rulers Council, NTRC, held in Abuja. This is the first time the Northern Governors sitting together with traditional leaders in the region, and they made a strong case for the need to allow states to establish police forces. The governors and other political leaders from the south and a few others from the north were more vocal in advocating for state police, a move dismissed in some quarters on the grounds that when established, those paying the bills to maintain the state police will abuse it by deploying the security outfit against their opponents. With me in the studio to discuss the desirability or otherwise of state police, Ahmad Sajo, who is the convener of the Nigeria Agenda, an advocacy group for leadership and governance, and a member of the NBC. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Also joining us for the discussion is Senator Iroebu, who is a security analyst and editor-in-chief of Global Sentinel. I hope I pronounced the name correct.
Yes, you tried.
Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. Now, gentlemen, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will take a minute's break, after which the conversation begins. Stay with us.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics, and let's now get into the discussions proper. And let me start with Senator. As a security analyst, you've been perhaps very much aware of this development. The issue of state police has been a mundane, if you like, debate in our polity, especially lately. But it has, always meet a brick, wall, so to speak. It has been part of a conversation even at the at fora like the national conferences and so on and so forth. I remember the last one, this issue featured prominently. Now 19 northern governors and the traditional institutions are coming together to give a nod to this initiative. Let me get your perspective now. What do you make up of this now coming? Some would say sought very lately.
Yes, I think it's a right step in the right direction, and I'm happy with the development because some of us has been on the vanguard of the call on the call for state policing. But when we are championing this, like any opportunity I have in any forum, I have always advocated for it. But when you listen to the voices, it was sounding then as if it's sectional, and most of us, our motive wasn't actually sectional. It was a concern for seeking solution for the security challenges we are the country is encountering. But now that the northern governors and traditional rulers has come into, now is having a national perspective. It's no longer the voices mostly from the southern part of the country. So because I've looked at it, I've looked at the whole thing, and I feel that the way the Nigerian security architecture, especially the policing system, is structured is not ideal for a federal country, a federal structure. Because even if you look at even countries that are unitary even in their structure, they still have a kind of decentralized policing system. Then why should a country that is federal in structure having such a centralized policing system? I know there was a reason why the centralized policing system came, but over time, those factors has given way, you know, showing that the way the country, being a federal country, the way it's designed, we should have a policing, a kind of decentralized policing system. And nature itself abhors vacuum. So that's why you're seeing mushrooming of militia groups, other self-defense vigilance groups, and which I am not an apostle of all these quasi, but still, number one law of nature is self-defense, and nature, like I said, abhors vacuum. In a place of community or state policing, that's why you're seeing, because people need to survive first.
Right, okay. We'll be talking about the legality or otherwise of it, because we know, as it is now, what is there in the Constitution perhaps may not give room for that, but then states are adopting gradually, which is also seen as, you know, illegal, but then also imperative. Well, let me take on Ahmed Sajo, looking at the situation, especially in northern Nigeria. He talked about those championing this initiative, you know, from the south, and then looking at the prevalence of security challenge, which is in the north, so to speak, northwest, northeast, perhaps north central, and then the sort of, you know, dragging, if I should put it that way, by leaders in this part of the country to key into this, and now, you know, beginning to see reason why they have to, I mean, also join in this direction. Is it to say it's an afterthought, or is it that they haven't seen the importance of it, you know, before now?
No, I think let's say something that it's better late than never.
Okay,
it's a right decision. But you see, we are a country of too many contradictions, and I must be honest with you. We are like the proverbial person that wants inheritance but doesn't want his father to die, which is impossible. You can't inherit somebody else's father, you know, unless you're a thief.
Or wanting to go to heaven and you don't want to die.
I don't want to die, you know, so that kind of a thing. But let's look at it this way. The most successful model of the native authority policing system then was in the north. So for the north to have even food dragged...
The Endocar system.
Exactly. For the north to have even food dragged itself in accepting a state police was even surprising to some of us. That's one. Two, you know, we have to understand that you cannot continue to run a federation, but the constituent sub-state structures are operating as if we're in a garrison. Not only in policing, you know, there are many other issues. Even the university strike that is going on. If the federal government does not want to pay its staff very well, why can't the states take it up upon themselves to pay their states and establish their own centers of excellence quite different from the federal government? Why can't we begin to look at the subnational entities as independent units of governance that could intervene in certain issues? So I think it's the right time to have state police in Nigeria. But those that are advocating for state police, whether they are governors or they are ordinary citizens or they are security experts like my brother sitting here, is that have we studied the gap in the federal police? What gap are we trying to fill? What is the structure of the federal police today? Is that what we're replicating? You know, today the biggest gap in our security architecture, I'm a victim, so I'm not talking, as an analyst. I'm talking as a victim of the unfortunate incidences of security. I come from the Northeast, and my hometown was overrun, and a lot of things had happened that I can talk about.
That's right.
The biggest, the strongest gap in our policing today is intelligence gathering, processing, and utilization. If we're bringing in a state police to fill in that gap, to take policing as close to the communities as possible, so we can bridge the gap, and then the trust deficit, where ordinary people do not trust the federal police. The many times I have witnessed where somebody has gone to report a criminal matter to the police, and he ended up being a victim because.
But is it a gap, so to speak, looking at the fact that we have?
So what we are saying, I'm coming. What we are saying is that if the police, state police that is coming, is to come and fill this first and foremost this gap in intelligence, so that we can have, information about things that are wrong within communities can be reported promptly. The intelligence intel will be processed and utilized promptly. We will be able to mitigate a lot of this. Yeah. But if we are replicating the brutality sometimes we witness in the existing police, or the compromises of blocking roads to collect 10 kobo, 20 kobo, if we are only going to duplicate it, we're still not going to get out of our ugly situation.
Yeah.
So this is where we need to ab initio. And then there is this problem of, in all countries where they have a structured police system, at different levels, their level of jurisdiction, the level of activities that they undertake, and the criminal matters they cover are delineated.
Areas of
responsibility are clearly demarcated, such that there will be no clash.
Okay, now talking about gap, some will say perhaps there hasn't been gap in terms of, intelligence gathering if
processing and utilization.
If only we are perhaps utilizing what we have on ground. For instance, there are divisional police officers across the 774 local governments, of this country, for instance. And then in the policing structure, there is also a unit which is responsible for, such intelligence gathering that we're talking about. Even criminalities that we're seeing today, there is a particular unit that is responsible for nipping it in the bud.
Shafiu.
But, yes, well, okay.
I don't know where you come from. I come from Mubi South local government of Adamawa State. I know the number of communities. We have village areas that would have village heads in that place are more than 10. With some district heads and the rest. Those villages are established communities. I can tell you that 70% of them don't have police presence. So even if you are talking about divisional police officers, divisional police officers are in the local government headquarters. And then they will have 2 or 3
We're talking about
outposts.
presence now. They are also in each local government of this country.
They are in each local government, but the gap, the major gap, is community policing. Why we are advocating for state police is so that the communities can be policed more than they are being policed today.
Okay, you were also talking about perhaps getting it right, which we all know that even the initial system, talking about the native authority, was also subject of abuse. And today the concern is that allowing state police in the hands of governors who are themselves politicians might perhaps use it, manipulate it to suit their own purposes or their own objectives. We know that even with the ones we have today, in most cases you find out that there are issues around state governors teleguiding, if you like, or influencing certain arrests and detentions and what have you along that. How do we, because that has been the concern, how do we move away from this if we're actually talking about adopting state police?
My brother here is a security analyst. He will tell you there are even individuals that manipulate the police for their own selfish interest. Manipulation is a human nature. Unless we collectively say we don't want our people to be manipulated. Otherwise, you will end up with a situation you will start asking yourself, why do we even have governors? Why do we have commissioners? Why do we have this? Look, if the fear is that they will be manipulated, then we will not have any sub-state structure in this country. Because at every level, and even the federal police, don't forget that some state governors are in so very good relationship with the leadership of the police in their states, because, of course, as somebody who operated at the cabinet level in the state, I know that if the states hands off contributing to manage the police formations within their states, the police stations, the police formations will literally collapse. So, and if a governor is generous enough to contribute effectively in managing the federal police formation, he could use that same manipulation you're talking about to do whatever he likes with the police. So please, let us not use that as an excuse.
Okay.
I think the greater interest should be that we need police presence in almost all our communities, so that our communities will be safer, so that intelligence, the information within communities can be harvested such that we would be able to process such intelligence and mitigate security challenges before they even become endemic like we have today.
Right. Okay. We're talking about structural issues. Our current structure in terms of what we have. In terms of policing structure, and what also we have in our laws. Backing all of this. That has been a major concern. For those who have been pushing for the state police, they find this as one of the blockades, so to speak. Each time you bring it forward, the issue of constitutional amendment, comes up, and because you cannot have state police in the present day constitutional provisions that we have. There has been efforts, to get the National Assembly to come up with, amendment in this respect, and this has happened, perhaps, with the fifth alteration that we've just witnessed, so to speak. And then, as we speak, these resolutions of the National Assembly are with the state houses of assembly. Didn't you think it would amount to perhaps, how do I put it now? Perhaps living what is important and then talking about, or rather looking for something that you already have in your backyard, for the governors to start talking about the need for state police when they know in their respective houses of assembly there is this provision. All they need is to influence, if you like, or to get their lawmakers to back it so that it can be passed, at the national level. How would you respond to this?
I think what they're talking is also part of sensitization and pressure, because a lot of people have not really understood the need for this state policing. For example, if the governors of northern states and the traditional rulers have not met, most of the state assemblies may not know the mindset that, okay, the perception has changed. So I think this will help to accelerate such, and again, they also need to study what the amendments are, because of the concern that were raised about some of the structural or the fear of influencing if you leave it in the hands of the state's governors. And I think it's not something the amendment should be rushed. Even the amendment itself, I feel that there should be enough sensitization, and Nigerians should be carried along, in very well in the amendment. If we are going to amend it like we are demanding, I don't think it's something that should be done in fiat, because there are a lot of complications or complexities that need to be, taken care of when you're amending it or decentralizing the structure. Because the fear that governors may abuse it is founded, is real.
Legitimate. Yeah.
It's legitimate. So, but there's how you can redesign it in such a way that it will work for the people. It will be people-owned. Because one of the problems of the policing system is that it's detached from the people. But when the police find out that they are owned by the people and they are working for the people, they are not answerable to one organ, to the president, or to just, that's why you see in advanced democracy, a police can go and arrest a prime minister, arrest a president without fear or favor, because you know that his promotion, his earnings, his whatever is not tied to the president, but to the people.
Yeah, but talking about okay. Land.
So, but if the police know that their allegiance is to the people, they will behave better. And if people know that yes, that this police is working for them, they have this sense of ownership. There will be cooperation. This, you are talking about intelligence, early warning system, that fear of going to police and you report a case and become a victim. Once this is well sorted out, you see our policing system will improve.
Okay, because when you talk about awareness, I was about to ask, the process of the amendment of the Constitution requires public hearing. Which is the basis of what the National Assembly would use perhaps to pass these legislations and so on. That perhaps have been done. And then the imperative have been seen, and then the National Assembly has amended, so to speak, those sections to provide for the state police. But where the problem is galvanizing the needed two-thirds of the states, to make it a law, so to speak. And again,
see, I want to... yes, there was public hearing, but do you know that state policing is just one of many
of the items?
I just wanted to pick out this state policing as an issue, magnify it, treat it as a special case. Because in the midst of the public hearing and other cases, the issue is being swallowed. You find out that there's a disconnection between the discussion, the campaign that is going on across, and what the National Assembly, the public hearing the National Assembly is holding. There's a disconnect. Like right now, most of people that are advocating it may not even know the nitty-gritties, the items, or that is embedded in that amendment by the National Assembly. It may be known by the few, but members of the public don't even know much about it, because it's not extensively debated, it's not isolated and treated as a special case. This is what I'm advocating for. Maybe we may need to revisit it again.
It's late.
Okay. Now, looking at the time frame, for instance.
No, they can go ahead and pass it. Then we can.
At the level of the State House of Assembly, there is no debate. You have only two options:
adopt
it or reject it. So, like Ekiti State House of Assembly,
has already adopted. Yes.
adopted.
I think that was the point I was trying to raise earlier.
All the issues around what should it be, what structure it should be, how it's going to be, I tell you, we have passed that.
Okay.
The National Assembly had passed the law, the amendment law. It's gone to the State Houses of Assembly.
For concurrence.
I think the value of what happened yesterday is to reassure the Northern Houses of Assembly that the fathers of the North, quote and unquote, the governors and the traditional rulers are in support of state police. So when the matter drops on table in the different states houses of assembly, we're expecting an affirmation.
When it has already dropped, actually. If Ekiti has already, passed it has been, I think since March, it has been transmitted to the State Assembly.
So automatically now, what the northern governors and traditional rulers are telling the state houses of assembly
is endorse it.
Is that endorse it because we have endorsed it.
Okay.
But
is this something that they have to come to the national television and say, I mean, to say rather than just go and lobby and do the needful?
Exactly. The reason why they did it this way, I'm not their spokesperson, but the reason why they did it this way can be found in what my brother here was talking to you about. They needed to raise public awareness. They needed to win public buy-in so that when the houses of assembly sit down to discuss it, they will not either foot drag or begin to think otherwise. That the matter is already in public domain. These people have spoken yesterday, and the overwhelming sentiment in northern Nigeria after their communique was that of support and endorsement.
Right. Okay. Beyond the states, it has to also go to the executive, for assent. But then looking at the posture, if you like, or the position of the federal government, when I say federal government, I'm talking about the presidency, for instance.
That is highly debatable. A lot of legal interpreters are saying by the provisions of the Constitution, once the 2/3 of the states concur, that amendment becomes law.
Without the assent of the president?
Because it's not a legislation that is in the normal sense of legislation. It is a legislation that covers, because there are still debates. If houses of assembly are involved, laws made in the houses of assembly are supposed to be endorsed by the governor. Laws made in the National Assembly are supposed to be endorsed by the president. Now here we have a law that is done by both. So do we need the signatures of the governors and the presidents combined? So a lot of jurists are saying once the houses of assembly
we're able to garner the 2/3.
2/3, it's a matter of cleaning it up and presenting it as an amendment. But then again, that's a legal matter. Nobody has gone to test.
Because the concern is, if, for instance, the National Assembly and the state assemblies are operating at different levels with the presidency in this respect. I was actually trying to talk about the posture, if you like, or the direction or the thinking of the presidency.
They can override
with regards to the state police. We all know that they don't favor the state police because of certain reasons they also advanced. Okay, so getting this, getting these two arms of government to be on the same page would also help, in realizing this objective. Didn't you think it is necessary?
But I think the governors and the traditional rulers cannot come to Abuja and sit down and talk about these things without actually making consultations at the highest level. My assumption, which may be right, may not be right, is that they are in touch with the highest level of governance in the state, in the country, and that overall, the overwhelming sentiment all over. Don't forget that the president, the attorney general, and all the operators of the executive, they also come from states. They also come from communities. Their communities have concerns. The leaders of these communities have spoken. I think we expect that everybody should key in behind the leaders of our communities.
You are trying to make a point?
No, I think the point I wanted to make here said that National Assembly can also, should it require that the president need to assent to it after getting the 2/3 of states assemblies. National Assembly can override if they see
Definitely.
that.
Yes. And the process of overriding the veto of the the vetoing the president is also cumbersome.
It's cumbersome. So, but still, like you noted, this is still since it's not like a new legislation that you raise in the national that requires president. This is like a law, a different, like a norm, exactly. A grand norm. Yeah. Yes, a law.
Amending the particular law.
Yeah, that's why it's passing through the state. It's not like a bill. This is not a bill.
So it cannot be subjected to
yes, this one comes a different. So that's why it's still subject because there are a lot of complexity. We are testing our constitution. So it may present a different legal perspective.
Okay.
But there are always a way to
Yeah, we'll get perhaps legal practitioners to also come and interpret this. I understand we have to take a break. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and today we're looking at the endorsement of state police by northern governors and the traditional institution. And we have been interfacing with Ahmed Sajo, a former Commissioner of Information in Adamawa State and the convener of the Nigeria Agenda. We also have in the studio Senator Iroebu. Senator Iroebu is the editor-in-chief of the Global Sentinel. He's also a security analyst. Together we'll be looking at the issue very closely. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And our talking point today is the endorsement of state police by northern governors, or rather northern leaders. Here we're talking about the state governors, the 19 northern state governors, and the traditional institutions. And we have in the studio Ahmed Sajo and Senator Iroebu. Well, looking at the broader perspective, beyond just advocating for the state police, one thing that is also important is funding, financing the policing system at the state level. Today, as we speak, there has been issue of concerns around paucity of funds, by the states. They go cap in hand, at the center, always talking about the need for bailout and what have you. And here they are, perhaps increasing the burden of governance on themselves. How do you think it is possible for the states to run, independent state policing system in this circumstance?
I think with the way the Nigerian policing system is run presently, even though we know that structurally it's a federal police, they are answerable to the center. Even the governor don't have the power to command a DPO. We've seen instances where that. But when it comes to funding and the practicality of it, you find out that most states are already funding the police. They buy them vehicles, they buy them so many, they support them. You find out that the federal government is not able to give the police all they need. So then we have these security votes. We don't even know what is
which is unaccountable.
So, but now you know that the states now will be responsible. And the state governors will be held accountable if they allow their state to collapse. So you find out that they will be now up and doing. The funding that is going to, you find out that policing at the federal level will be leaner. So most of the states will now take responsibility of that policing. So the funding that they normally used to support federal police will now go to policing. Most of the funding that goes to security votes, some of them will be channeled properly to this state police. But now, when we are talking about decentralizing policing system, some of the mistakes we are thinking, some people may be thinking that it goes in isolation. It should go together with so many other things. Decentralizing so many, be it the physical aspect of, so that some of the resources, state can be able to manage their resources themselves.
Yeah.
It's another controversial issue.
Yeah, because
but the decentralization shouldn't just be focused on police alone, because if you leave it over time at a long time, it will run into problem. If you don't decentralize some other governance. He mentioned about the ASU, the education aspect.
Yeah, I was actually coming to that because yes, you're talking about decentralizing the security architecture, or rather the security system. Even the items that have been decentralized, what comes of them? What happened? Talking about education, talking about...
Well, in the case of the police, let's talk about figures.
Okay.
Let's talk with figures.
Okay.
Let's reason deeply on this issue. First and foremost, imagine the unnecessary and uncalled for controversy about who recruits policemen in Nigeria. That is something entirely avoidable and is very insensitive as far as the people's protection is concerned.
Between the police and the Police Service Commission
and the police force and things.
Stalling even
that is
the
not
process.
Just alone. Presently, records are hard to come by in Nigeria, but it is assumed that we have like 350,000 policemen in uniform in Nigeria. It's an assumption. Nobody will tell you the correct figure.
Put together, they're talking about 800,000 or thereabout, put together all the security forces.
So the police, let's talk police like 350,000 for 200 million people. Out of these 350,000, we have about 150,000 that are doing VIP duties, quote and unquote. Means we have like 200,000 policemen for 200 million population. You don't need, it's not rocket science for you to know that
it's grossly inadequate.
It's inadequate.
Right.
Meanwhile, there are some of these challenges are in very difficult communities. Majority of these policemen are in the cities. If you walk around in Abuja later in the evening or any time from 7, 8, for every corner you navigate, you would see a police team there. Meaning majority of and if you go to the state capitals, it's the same thing. So majority of our policemen
it's at the center.
Are operating in the cities. The communities are unpoliced almost completely. I tell you where I come from. I know the number of policemen that are there. I know the number of communities that are there. I know communities that I can count by name here as I'm sitting down where there is no policeman at all.
Okay. Now, to address this, Mr. Ahmed Sajo, to address this, some are already advocating the need to co-opt, if you like, or adopt the informal arrangement, talking about the civilian joint task force, whatever, the vigilante arrangement, which is present at the local levels. We've also seen, what impact such arrangement is making already in the Northeast, where you come from. Now, some Northwestern states are also adopting that, incorporating the, as it is today, based on the statistics given by a former commissioner, Austin Iwar, this informal security arrangement is already running in about 25 states of the Federation. So what it means is that informally, this state policing initiative has already taken up, is even in place. But how do we formalize it? How do we harmonize it, to get the result? Perhaps is the major aim.
But let me tell you, when Murtala Nyako was the governor of Adamawa State, I was working with Murtala Nyako in his office. And we had an arrangement. He impaneled an arrangement whereby vigilantes and hunters had created a buffer zone between Adamawa and Borno. And for the period that he was governor, the Boko Haram did not enter into Adamawa. He was impeached on the 14th of July, 2014. 2 weeks later, before the end of, around 28th of July, that was when Boko Haram entered, because immediately they impeached him. They cancelled that arrangement and returned to allowing the formal security setup to protect the buffer zone between Adamawa and Borno. And instantly Boko Haram entered and took 7 local governments.
So you see,
we had to, again, when Balanglari became the governor, Bala had to return to the original plan of using hunters and vigilantes to roll back the Boko Haram. Meaning this informal arrangement that we see as not
quasi kind of arrangement, yes,
is functioning. But you need to formalize it. There has to be some rules of engagement. There has to be some methods of understanding what needs to be done and at what time. And in a system where even the current federal police, most of them buy their accoutrements. You understand? Unfortunately.
And you expect them to perform. And you expect them also to live above board.
Not to stop you on the road. And, you know, so these are some of the very serious issues.
Okay, talking about impact, Senator, just like he said, earlier I was talking about the need for action, rather than just lamentations or continuous, discussions, round table discussions and so on and so forth. We've seen the efforts, taken by the Southwestern governors. At a point, they had to stood their ground and come up with a motekun. Issue of regularization is raising here. Regularization, putting in how is going to the roadmap, on how to operate it and all of that were addressed. In fact, today, Amotekun is bearing arms, so to speak, which is, so looking at all of this, and perhaps the impact, just like he's saying, today the Southwest is at the top, at the low, below the table when it comes to security issues. What stops perhaps the governors, the northern governors, from coming up with this regional arrangement or formalizing it, giving it the necessary support it requires, since this constitutional amendment issue might take too long?
I think it's because of those fears that was expressed before among the northern figures. And sometimes when you get some perception from the north, I think since after the Civil War, so they are averse to all these regional security arrangements. So, but I think with what is happening now, they are beginning to see that, look, this is a reality we are facing now, and that individual states are already having this quasi-arrangement. So, but it's good that it's formalized. Maybe it will help them, it will help this process of passing the state assembly to pass it. Like in my introductory remark, I say, even though nature abhors vacuum, even though I don't like the quasi arrangement because even though they are helpful, it's a mother of necessity. It's a kind of
it has perhaps also a long-term kind of effect.
But you don't, nature abhors vacuum. Like you notice when the southeast drag, they wanted to set up immediately. In fact, they started discussing their own even before Southwest. But because they were full dragging, they were still watching the body language of the center. Because of that vacuum, Nnamdi Kanu created his own Eastern Security Network. And see the problem we are having today. So now that's why this issue, whatever the northern political elites or elites have, I think they are coming to terms and reality that this is something that should be done. Even if they don't want to have a kind of quasi-regional arrangement, maybe as the state policing, that's why I think is something.
Even though that is also imperative, looking at the nature of the security situation, it goes beyond just a state. It's like a challenge that goes
it's a challenge
across states. I think, for instance, banditry. Katsina cannot address banditry without collaborating with Zamfara and Kaduna.
Yes, and that's why if you find out even the Amotekun, the laws backing it, the setup was passed by individual Southwest states. So, but it's the operational modalities that now they can cooperate across
uniformly.
States. uniform.
Right.
So the northern this thing can adopt it.
Okay.
They can pass it by they can have individual state arrangements, but they cannot
have a central.
No, we even like Adamawa, Yobe, and to some extent Gombe, and we've already adopted the civilian joint task force. And those very brave chaps from Borno had come to support the local arrangement that has been made.
So they are informal.
So could it be a fastest way to addressing this issue of insecurity instead of stopgap kind of arrangement, looking at the cumbersome nature of the constitutional amendment and all of that? Perhaps this current administration is rounding up, so to speak. Some couple of months, 8 or 9 months, they will be out of office. And some would say continuity is also another issue.
No, I think it's not. There's enough time to amend the constitution, enough time to have laws in different states that establish their own policies in their states, with the arrangement for recruitment, for training, for discipline, with rules of engagement, whatever that can be done within the shortest possible time. The key consideration should be the people.
Right.
The people are suffering. In most northern states, the real impact of the insecurity is not even in what is being reported in the media, but in the dislocation of social conditions, such as economic livelihoods like farming and trading, such as
local economy has been crippled.
Aside from that, social relationships, ceremonies can no longer hold. You go and get married, and then as they are conveying your bride, some group of people come and take her away. A lot of social dislocations are taking place in northern Nigeria, and in many other parts of the country. So if anybody sits down and dilly-dallies because it takes, I give you the example of what happened recently. The National Assembly amended the Electoral Act. There was a portion of it that the executive did not like. The National Assembly went to the executive went to the National Assembly. Please amend this one because we don't like it. The National Assembly says, well, it takes a long time to amend the law. Then when they realized that the law had also affected them, they amended it in 1 day.
That's right.
Then when they took it to the executive, it takes a very long process to sign a law, to assent to a law. So all this one we're doing, in reality, these are deceptions. We're deceiving ourselves.
Right. Okay, fundamentally.
We can do this within a record time and achieve it and secure our people. You don't have to wait until it happens to you.
Right. Okay. The ultimate objective, perhaps, is to provide security of lives and properties to the people, which is a fundamental responsibility of every government. But there has been also concerns around looking at the reasons behind this rising insecurity. Not just talk about the security presence and what have you. Addressing governance issues, poverty, unemployment, deprivation, injustice, and so on and so forth. This, the governors and other leaders, political leaders, if you like, are not talking about.
Did you read the communique?
And they were talking about, perhaps, if I understand where you're going, they're talking about raising 2,000 megawatts of electricity through solar
generation. They are appealing to ASU. I understand where you are headed to. In reality, let me be very brutally wicked. That in Nigeria today, leadership is more of a title. Like you say, Mr.
Than responsibility, perhaps.
Exactly. So we see leadership as a title than a responsibility. And we pay more attention to the entitlements of the office holder rather than the responsibilities of the office holder.
That's right.
It's something we need to address. I have, for example, I am one of those that are advocating for a total review of our constitution. This present constitution, as established, cannot serve the interests of this country. Look at what happened.
Well, is it about laws?
Look at what happened.
Or attitudes and implementation.
The law too. We have section part 2 of the constitution, the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. All of that are very beautiful. Government is supposed to provide A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and at the end of it, it's not justiciable. So the constitution guarantees those things, but if the government does not implement, you can't go anywhere and ask. But look at what happened. Look at what happened in Kenya. We need to learn.
Okay, accountability.
When was the elections held? Within a few weeks, elections were held. Within a few weeks, the Supreme Court has judged. Within a few weeks, the man had been sworn in.
Yeah. Speedy dispensation of justice.
Speedy everything.
Which is very, very critical. Now, talking about, changing attitude, and also looking at the fundamentals, what governance accountability, holding leadership accountable. If we have all of this happening, perhaps we will see a reduction in the level of crimes. What's your last line on this?
Last line on this is that people need to begin to own governance. For example, I spoke with a relative in the East, and
very quickly.
Yes, about. Yeah. So I was asking the mood of the people, because even from what I'm seeing, I'm afraid the way there's a complete disconnect between the political leaders in that region and the masses. Because the masses felt that, look, we don't know who are these guys. They are imposed on us. We did elect them. They are not speaking for us. They are not representing us. And they are not even, the leaders also are not even listening.
Legitimacy deficit.
So the legitimacy is not there. So even whatever arrangement they may make now, if they don't begin to put in such a system, beginning with even electoral system or
internal party
mechanism, whereby the choice of the people are elected. And yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe give 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I think the legitimacy deficit is from us.
Okay.
You imagine Anambra State, for example, has a population of over 5 million people. How many people elected the current governor? 140,000. For crying out loud, does that represent the will of the people?
We are talking about.
Does that represent the will of the people? Is it really a rule of majority?
That's a fundamental question that needs to be addressed. And perhaps from there we begin to see our problems, being addressed. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your inputs and perspectives on this. Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner of Information, Adamawa State, and of course, convener the Northern Agenda.
The
Nigerian Agenda, sorry. Yes, Senator Aregu, of course, a security analyst and editor-in-chief of the Sentinel magazine, right? Thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of our guests and the technical crew, this is where we come to the end of this conversation. I'm Shafiu Suleiman. Many thanks for staying with us.